All right, I think this is working. Um, so it's day something of being quarantined. I don't know how this video is going to turn out, but I've been drilling a lot by myself and have been putting a lot of thought into how some of the movements in jiu-jitsu are neglected a lot of the time by a lot of people, especially lower belts, newer people, or really, I'm guilty of it too, upper belts who tend to get a little lazy or don't think so much about these movements. So I'm going to go over a couple of the essential movements for jiu-jitsu. There is a chat feature, so while I'm live for all 0 people who are watching, 2 people who are watching now, one of them might be me. You can say something in the chat if you have a question or comment, and I'll try to read them. So I'm going to start with something pretty simple, and it's just basic bridging. So I'm going to adjust this camera so you can see the mats. Take these off. So a lot of people at most gyms, myself included, do bridges almost every time they train, but we don't really think about the movements that are incorporated in them. So we're going to start with just the most basic straight hip bridge. So I'm going to start on my back, and the closer I can bring my feet to my hips, the stronger my bridge will be. So feet are going to be close, and I'm going to be on the balls of my feet. At no point, pretty much ever, but especially in this position, will I be flat-footed like this. This is terrible. So I'm going to be on the balls of my feet, as close to my hips, as close to my butt as I can be. And I'm just going to bridge straight up onto my shoulders, elevating as high as I can. It's a very simple movement. It's not something that we'll do a ton of rolling, but it's important to be able to get feet close, hips high, and then return to that spot. So it's just a simple straight bridge. And then from there, we're going to incorporate bridging up to our side. So I'm going to go to my left towards the camera, but you can do this in both directions. You should do this in both directions. So hips are going to be close. I'm going to bridge up onto my left shoulder, and I'm extending my legs a little bit to turn. Now from this position, we can do a lot of things. Right now, I'm just going to come back to square. So to drill it, you would bridge, reach, touch the mat, come back down. Bridge, reach, touch the mat, come back down. Back and forth. So that'll be your drill from that. And it's important to be able to go both sides, to go quick, and to return to the center. Now, building off that, we can add bridging to come up to our knees. So the way I would recommend training this so far is maybe 10 to 20 straight bridges, 10 to 20 side bridges on each side. And then we're going to bridge going from our back to our knees. So feet close to the hips. We're going to bridge and reach. And as I hit this apex of my bridge, my bottom leg, so in this case, my left leg, is going to drop and use that as a pivot point for my left or my right knee to come over top. So it's a quick way to get from your back up onto your knees. So feet close, elevate your hips, drop your knee, and pivot. And I understand my back is coming up to the camera there. I can do it the other way just to show. Feet close, bridge up onto the shoulder, knee drops, and pivot over. It's a very simple movement, doesn't take much effort, and it's important a lot of times when you're rolling to be able to quickly get from your back to your knees. This is an essential movement for escaping mount, It's really important for really a lot of things. I should have thought through what I was saying more before I did it. So we're going to take that and build. Oh, you're not always going to want to come to your knees from such an exaggerated position. Sometimes we'll just want to be able to come up. So to do that, I'm going to let my bottom leg, left leg drop and post my right foot up. So one knee up, one leg down. The leg that's down, the hip is down to the mat. Use this a lot in half guard. If you're not familiar with it, you can start from your elbow. It's a little bit easier, but also a little less realistic a lot of the time. So from here, I'm going to sort of bridge and bring my leg through. So lift up, bring my leg through. And that's going to put us in that same knee pivot position to drop. If you're a half guard player, that's an essential movement. I use it all the time, especially if you're a fan of Lucas Leitch's Coyote half guard style game, which I play. Being able to turn up to your knees from that position is hugely beneficial. So I'll do it one more time, the other side. Hip is down, leg is extended. Other foot is close to my hips, knee pointed up. Bridge and elevate through. Come up to my knees. So that's what I had to go over for bridging. I'm just looking at my notes here. So that was a straight bridge, bridging to your side, bridging to turtle turn, and bridging, semi-bridging to come up to your knees from a half guard-esque position. So that's just a simple starting point to warm up. If you're doing this as a workout, like I said before, 10 to 20 of each. If you do them in quick succession with few breaks, that will actually get you pretty tired. So from there, I'm going to transition into hip escapes, which is, in my opinion, the most essential movement in jiu-jitsu. And it's also one of the movements I see done incorrectly a lot of the time. Or not necessarily incorrectly, but suboptimally. So you'll hear these referred to shrimps, snakes, hip escapes. They're all used interchangeably. They're all the same thing. But I'm purposely using the term hip escape because anyone who's watching this, I want you to understand that this is a movement for your hips and anything around it is additional. So a lot of times we drill these, shrimp down the mat, straighten out, shrimp down the mat. And it's that straightening out part that's additional. It's not an essential part of the hip escape. So we're going to look at a few variations. Looking at my notes here, I've got 8 variations. I'm not going to spend too much time on any of them, but they're all critical movements to work on if you want to improve your jiu-jitsu. And if you want to improve it very quickly, I found that being more mobile on the ground is a huge benefit. I'm very guilty of being lazy on the ground. So these are things that have helped me tremendously. And before I do it, I'm going to say, I tell this story every time I teach anyone to do hip escapes. I did them wrong up until purple belt. It wasn't until I was at a seminar with Paul Schreiner and he kind of pulled me aside and like, dude, I don't know what you're doing, but that wasn't a good trim. So I worked with him for a few minutes and then I studied a bunch of different people and how they teach it. And this is the way that I've come to understand it. You'll see other ways. They're not wrong. This is how I personally approach hip escapes. So we're going to start with the most simplistic variation, which is both feet on the mat going backwards. So I am going to shrimp on my left shoulder, my hips moving to the right. So when I use left and right, left shoulder, hips are moving to the right. I'm going to start with both feet close to my butt. and I'm going to turn up onto my left shoulder. The key here, or two keys, my left shoulder is going to be my pivot point, and my hips need to break contact from the mat. I'm not saying exaggerate it and put your butt up in the sky. That's most of the time not necessary. Pivot, break contact from the mat. And then from here, I'm going to extend my legs and try to put my hips on line with my head. So if I could move the camera over me, you would see that I'm ending up in an L shape. Hard to see from here, but again, move back a little bit. Maybe it'll give more focus. Turning up onto my shoulder, breaking that contact from the mat. Extending to bring my hips back. Now we're not looking at reversing yet. We're not going anywhere except right here. At this point, because we're doing it in isolation, I don't care how you get back to center. So onto the shoulder, hips break from the mat, and shoot them back. And you're going to end up in an L shape, or like a shrimp, creative name. So that is the most basic fundamental version, is both legs. But we don't always get that option when we're rolling. So I'm a big proponent of you have to be able to shrimp off one leg in every direction. So I'm going to use just my right leg as the example. You can do it both. I'm only going to do it on my right. So my left leg is dead. It's trapped. It's somewhere. I don't care where. But I can't use it for this shrimp. I'm still going to elevate, shoulder, hips break contact. And from there, I'm going to push back with one leg. And I'm not going to travel as far. And that's okay. Elevate and extend. Again, if you're a half guard player, essential movement, it's great. Now, switching to my left leg on purpose because I don't want to, put my butt to the camera. For whatever reason, now I can't use my right leg. It's underhooked. It's trapped. I'm being over-underpassed. Whatever reason, I can't use it. So I'm just going to keep it up in the air. Same movement coming off my left. Up onto my shoulder, hips break from the mat, and extend back. Like I said, I don't care how you get back right now. Only one foot. Up onto the shoulder, hips break from the mat, and extend. So right there, that gives us 3 variations of the shrimp. Both feet, top foot, bottom foot. And those are all going backwards. Now from there, it gets a little more interesting. If you're having trouble with those, just stop there and don't move on. But now we're going to go forward. So you can move backwards, and it's very simple to figure out how to move side to side with that. Going forward is a little tougher. This is not a big movement. You're not going to cover very much ground. And that is okay. That's not the point. Typically, a forward shrimp or a forward hip escape is to get further under your opponent. It's not to get away. It's to get under them. So while I may cover 2-3 feet on a backwards hip escape, I'm going to cover 6 inches to a foot going forward. If you've ever done these down the mat, you realize it's a lot tougher. So I'm purposely going to do it in this direction. It might be a little harder to hear me. And again, we're going to do it off of each individual foot. In terms of a forward hip escape or a forward shrimp, if there's a way to do it off both feet, I've never learned it and I don't know it. So we're going to go forward, and we're going to start using our top foot. So in this case, my top foot is my right, and it's going to be the same principle. I'm going to dig my heel in to elevate my hips. And from there, I'm going to throw my hips through, and I'm going to go from being on my left hip to land on my right. So hips up and land on my right. And I'll go back just so I don't. Right? So now I'm doing it left foot, hips up, and land on my left. So that's a little bit harder. Takes a little more effort, but it's really good for getting underneath your opponent. Now, that said, that was using the top foot. That's my preferred method personally, but again, it's not always an option. So for whatever reason, my right foot is trapped. It's underhooked. It's smashed down. I don't know. I don't care. So now I'm going to use my bottom foot. Key here is digging my toes down into the mat. There's no way to go from being flat-footed here that I've figured out. Ball of your foot, and it's mostly going to be your pinky toe and your outside three toes, dug in. I'm going to elevate, and I'm going to pull myself through, landing on my other hip. Now, you should find that each time you do this, you're ending up in a mirrored position of where you started. So you're starting on your left, already curled like you just finished the shrimp, and you're going to end up mirrored on your right, and vice versa. So that should cover backwards and forward shrimping. I know it was a bit of a crash course. If there's demand, I'll do like isolated videos on those. So backwards with both feet, backwards top foot, backwards bottom foot, forward top foot, forward bottom foot. So now, bringing this back to going from our back to our knees, we're going to look at a shrimp up to your knees. And this should start to look very familiar. 1 foot, 2 foot, I don't care. I'm going to shrimp. And this kind of puts us in that peak of the bridge position. So from there, I'm going to drop my knee. That's going to become my pivot point. And turn up over. Should look familiar from the bridge, right? Peak of the bridge, drop your knee, turn over, shrimp, drop your knee, turn over. It's the exact same position, the exact same movement. So I'm checking the chat. There's nothing there. So I'm going off of my notes here. All right, I have one more shrimp variation I wanted to touch on. And this is the one that I'm not the best at. For you little flexible, lanky guys, this is great. In the heavyweight class, you don't see this much. So from that shrimp position, we can also invert. If you don't know how to invert, fast forward like 2 minutes. That's a whole video in and of itself that I'm not the best qualified to teach. But we're going to go from that shrimp up on our shoulder, hips break from the mat. And from here, I'm going to bring my knee my head semicircle towards my knee. So I'm up, I'm shrimp. And now I'm inverted. Can go all the way around. I'm just going to return back down. Shrimp. I'm going to bring my head towards my knee. Like I said, lanky, flexible dudes, great. Quarantined used to be a heavyweight, now possibly a super heavyweight. Not great. So that covers shrimping, bridging. And the last thing I'm going to do is the technical stand-up. This actually gets taught pretty well in my experience, but it's worth covering. So, very simple. I'm going to go on my right side. We're going to start with seated. Left foot is posted. Right hand is posted. So opposites, diagonal across the body. Left foot, right hand. And just like I talked about with shrimping, I'm going to break contact from the mat. I'm going to do that by pushing off my left foot and using my right arm as a base. So I'm elevating my hips. From there, notice my left hand is up. Sorry. In a self-defense situation, this would be blocking me from being punched in the face, hopefully. In a more realistic situation, or in a sport situation, I'd be grabbing a collar, grabbing a sleeve, blocking the knee from coming in for a knee cut. It all depends situationally. So left hand is up, left foot is posted, right arm is posted. Hips come up, step back through. You end up kind of in this surfer squat position and come up. Now, if you're going to bring this into any standing, I stand orthodox, I'm right-handed. But if I was left-handed or I came up the other side, I would step back here. I'm not going to step forward and cross my feet. I'm going to step back to come to the other stance. So post, hand is blocking, elevate the hips, step back through to this low kind of surfer squat position, and shuffle back. Never cross your feet in that position. Any type of crossing your feet is almost a guaranteed takedown if you don't fall on your own. So that's the basic technical stand-up. One thing I like to add, because I like to show this is a quick variation, it's great for sport jiu-jitsu, it's also really good for self-defense, is coming up out of that technical stand-up, we're almost always taught to come all the way to our feet, which is great. But one thing I like to do a lot is elevate, everything starts the same, and come to this real low position. And from here, I can come right into my penetration step for a double leg, single leg, whichever I want to do. So that's just an idea to keep in mind when you get back to having people you can, take down. So here, they can be out. I'm just doing it. Technical stand up, but I'm coming super low. From there, I can come right to my penetration step. And I think that covers everything that I plan to go over today. It's been about 23 minutes, which is good enough for me. I think this video will be archived and posted publicly if I can figure out technology. I'm old and technology scares me. So we're going to see what I can do, but thanks for watching. And we will try this again in the future if it goes well.